Coming to you from the all-new Live House in Hollywood, California.
It's time for another Pensado's Place. In a second, you'll meet the brilliant Rich Costi. But first, let's start with 6. Yes, I did say 6 winners in the Pensado's Place Ultimate Vocal Contest brought to you by Auto-Tune. Without further delay, let's hear those names. Drum roll, please. They are Don Puno, Tony Allen, Andrew Williams, Giuseppe Coronella, Antonio Ferrara, and Duncan Monroe. Congratulations to you guys. Well done. You're about to become vocal ninjas with your new mics and the whole thing. It's going to be great. But what about the rest of you? Hurry up, get going, get it in now so I can announce your name next week. You know what you get. You get Auto-Tunes Unlimited, which is the vocal suite of the gods, the AKG Lyra mic, plug and play out of the box, and comes with Ableton 10. You all are submitted for grand prize winner, and the grand prize winner gets an hour session with star engineer Quentin Q. Gilkey, he of Eminem, Dr. Dre, and Anderson .Paak fame, plus the AKG C314 mic, and maybe best of all, you'll appear on Pensado's Place with Dave and I. Looking forward. Here's how you do it. Enter at news.autotune.com/Pensados. Do that right now. Auto-Tune, kicking that booty. Come on, we want to hear from you. Also, do us a favor. Check out Warm Audio's holiday sale. You can save $200 on a host of their best product. That's good at dealers all over the U.S., so check that out. We're preparing, we'll announce it next week, Pensado's 12 Days of Christmas, where you can win some plugins for Christmas. Those plugins are from folks like Mike Dean, DJ Swivel, Leapwing, Dave, a really good artist tool from BandPay. Watch next week for the announcement. We're going to get you going, take care of you for Christmas. Do us a favor, hit us on all our socials, like and subscribe, click notify. And now, Rich Costi is talented, smart, a ball to talk to. We certainly had a good time. Enjoy our conversation. We have to apologize to our guest because we've been stalking him now for a while, and it just borderlines on criminal. But we slid in under the wire. You guys have demanded him as well. Grammy Award winner, Latin Grammy Award winner, rock savant, and good dude. Please welcome Rich Costi. Rich.
Hi, nice to see you guys.
Man, very
happy to be here.
Well, we played tag for almost a year to get this together, but good things come to those who wait. One of the fun parts about being a fan of what you do and doing what we do is you get to sort of compare things and see if those comparisons hold up or not. And the correlation that I found was actually between you and Dave in this context.
Oh.
You both have the ability to put your signature stuff into the work that you're doing, but not lose what the artist intention is, so that you impact it, but it's not defined. The lack of signature is the signature. Like you've enhanced the bands or the artist where they're going, but you put the full Rich Costi on it. He does the same thing with his work. And I think it's because, and then I'll stop this ramble, I think it's because you guys like so many different kinds of music. And
first of all, that's extremely high praise. Thanks for that. I mean, and I think you're completely accurate. I listen to all kinds of music. And I think that the main goal whenever I'm working is actually to focus the intent of the output of the artist and present it in the best way possible. And that changes completely depending upon who the artist is, obviously.
Yeah.
And being somebody who not only listens to, but works on quite a wide variety of styles of music, I think it's a pretty heavy job requirement that you do that. And I think you nailed it.
Cool.
One of the things that and thank you, Herb, by the way. Appreciate being lumped in with Rich. But There was a comedian back in the 20s that said, must be awful to wake up in the morning and know that's as good as you're going to feel for the rest of the day. So he'd proceed to get drunk. And I think in terms of mixing, you and I have a similar philosophy. We respect the demo. We try to maintain as many of the positive things from the demo that we like. But the artist should understand that if we give you an enhanced demo, that's as good as it can possibly be. Why not take a chance and see if it can be better? What have you got to lose? We can always go back to the demo. And so the thing that caught my ear about you early on was you got a lot of Brian Eno in you, and then I can tell that wasn't the demo. You know?
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And
just keep it coming, guys. This is good. Just keep it coming.
I made a mistake with this interview about a month ago. I happened to watch the interview you did with Andrew Scheps. So if I pinched a couple of things, it's from Scheps. It's I think you'll be okay with it. But
of course.
By the way, I think I did an episode on Scheps, and I think you beat my time length interview by a few minutes. So
it went on for a long time, that one.
A long time.
Yeah.
But am I onto something there? I mean, it feels like you like to take it somewhere, not just the demo, but beyond.
I mean, it's a tricky spot. I feel like sometimes someone has worked on a piece of music for a long period of time, and they've gotten it to a point where they're pretty happy with it. And what they really want you to do is not transform what's there, but to kind of just enhance what's there. And sometimes it's even just a matter of like just giving a stamp of like, yeah, it sounds fine, you know? And sometimes that's all the job is. And that's totally okay. And then there are other times where it does, if you're in the middle of something and you come up with an idea, you want to push it and see what happens. It's harder to do that with an artist that you don't know very well, because if they get something back that sounds unfamiliar, or if they're not in the room with you, which is most of the time these days, obviously, then you could be in a whole heap of trouble. You know, it's better to take those kind of chances when you're in it together and you've got skin in the game together. Or if they take something to you and they say like, and they sort of expect you to transform it. I think mixing has changed a bit. A lot. 20 years ago. It was expected that you would transform it to some degree. Probably, I can imagine that like when Bob Clearmountain was getting his sound together in the 80s, I can't imagine the rough mixes sounded anything like what he ended up doing to it. But nowadays, because there's so many tools available during the production process, things are pretty dialed in generally by the time you get them. Nevertheless, I do spend a lot of my time producing. So occasionally things will come to me and they'll want me to do a bit of additional production, add some things. So the line between mixing and producing can be bent as well.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a demarcation line between the mixing and the producing side, where the mixing side, you may be taking the band's general direction, enhancing it and bringing home what they want. The producing side is more about your input and vision and being hired to take it someplace that you see. Is that a fair kind of?
Yeah, and it can be tricky. When I'm called to mix a project, I'll back the producer and the artist 1,000% and won't be interested in inputting any of my point of view from any kind of production point of view. I just want to find out what they have in mind and channel them as best as I can. That's really, I think anything beyond that is kind of not being fair to what they've come up with. But then if you're mixing your own production, obviously you can just do whatever you want. You could nuke the entire thing during mixing and start over again.
Now, one of the weird things, as we tape this show, it's the week of Thanksgiving. And somehow in a weird way, part of what I used to do on the last 3 Thanksgivings is put on Muse really loud in my car and drive relatively safe at high speed with Muse really loud in my car.
Hey.
And you have had a hand in my Thanksgiving and without even knowing it. But when I listened to Muse and then I did research on you, it now really came together to me because there's something so funky about Muse. something so, and what I realized is that there's this nuanced hip hop bottom groove thing that it supports the rock of Muse as opposed to commands it. And man, I just rock out when I'm playing that. Am I getting close to the perspective?
I mean, these insights are pretty on the money here. Like, that's one of the things that I always try to do when I work with that band. I've worked with them for years, off and on. And I really do spend a lot of time working on just the rhythm aspect of what they're doing. Not that Dom isn't awesome, because he is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think part of what I try to bring to the project is a slightly different feel that can give something a bounce. Going back to like even the first record we did together was Absolution. There are some tunes on there like I think like Hysteria has a kind of a bounce to it, and in that song. And I feel like that was something we worked on a lot during rehearsal. And like on the album after that, Supermassive Black Hole, those drums are largely just programmed and Dom played on top of them. And again, the song was the demo structurally and everything was pretty much identical to what you have there. But that is something that we definitely spent some time getting that cooking.
It worked.
It's good to know.
I can verify that Herb listens to Muse wide ass open, because I've experienced that quite a few times, to the point to where I had to get out of the car and take a cab the rest of the way.
I've offended a lot of people
in the years.
Sure.
But, I'm real curious. I'm glad Herb brought that up. The guitar sounds on the Muse records that you did, being a guitar player myself, I've never heard a guitar sound like that. What can you? I don't want you to do any NDA stuff. But what was the damn amp that they used, or you used, the guitar amp?
Well, I produced most of the last album too, so it changes on every album. I mean, when we did Absolution, I had heard. I mean, I'm going to ramble a bit, and you guys can edit this later because I don't know how boring it's going to be. But I had been working at what's now East West, and down the hall, Michael Beinhorn was working down there. And I heard he was in the studio too, and I heard some ridiculous guitar tone coming through the wall. I think he was doing a Hole or something. And I went down there and asked him, and it was the Diesel. And I'd never heard one or never even seen one before. So I immediately bought one. And I was producing a band for Capitol at the time called Cave In, and we recut all the guitars in 3 days with that head.
Really?
Because I felt that strongly about the sound of that amp. And so then when we started Absolution, what turned out to be Absolution, I showed up with that amp, and Matt had a bunch of sort of custom Marshalls, but his guitar tone at that point in time was something that I felt like was a work in progress. It had it was highly inventive, but it was very mid-rangey, and I wanted to get more in touch with like the fingers on the strings and really hear the kind of inside of what he was doing. And so yeah, we used mostly the Diesel head. I think it's a VH4 for pretty much that whole album. I still have that head somewhere. But then on the album after that, I showed up at the studio and they had started rehearsing with the Diesel and everything. And I went over and unplugged it. And I'm like, nope, not for this record. And so, and so then we got in some vintage Marshalls and some AC30s, and most of Black Holes was cut with that. And since then, it's always been kind of a mix of things. We share something. I think I'm right. Back before I was engineering, when I was just more a guitar player, I used to get my inspiration from England, and still do. And so the 80s were like my favorite decade, because there was so much going on in England that was just different. And when people ask me, what's the sound of the 80s? I go, uniqueness, because you can't compare Boy George to any of the other bands. I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, even George Michael.
I can say that I never heard two bands that sounded alike come out of England, and all that to say, are you still doing that? Because I'm still pinching from England big time on every mix.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's still about half of my clients are still from the UK, and depending upon what year it is, sometimes it's more than that, sometimes it's less. Right now, it's quite a lot of the stuff that I'm working on is from the UK. I think that when you're working you're dealing with a place like the UK, or I've worked in Iceland a lot. They're smaller countries, and because of that, I feel like everyone's got a close eye on everybody else. They all know what's going on. You can get a buzz on pretty quickly and get a lot of attention early on in your career. And so part of the thing people need to do is stake out their own place. Otherwise, people will call them out for what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that that actually drives the innovation. I think it's been that way in that country for a really long time.
Mm-hmm. Block Party changed my life. I mean, that was incredible. Incredible record. Amazing. Still holds up today, by the way.
It still sounds kind of good. I got to admit, it sounds all right. Yeah.
Obviously, the pandemic has created these sort of different things we all have to deal with, specifically to tracking and getting a band going. Mixing, that can be a one-on-one thing, but it's still different when you don't have the client in the room and can talk about things and so on and so forth. How have you adjusted? What's been the process for you?
Well, for mixing, it hasn't been really that different because it's a rare thing when someone shows up to mixing. I mean, there's certain artists where it's really important to them to be there and part of the process. But so far, it hasn't really been that much of an issue. For production, it's been kind of interesting. What happens is when I'm producing anyway, I do a lot of programming and I do a lot of additional parts. And now it'll be more collaborative. I'll just send the files, add a bunch of stuff, send it back out. Next week, I start a project with a UK artist who's going to be in a residential studio in the UK, and I'm just going to be in the corner on an iPad. And we did a few days of a test session like that, and it actually was great. It was completely fine. Mm-hmm. One of the things I actually liked about it is that I'm in my own control room instead of being in some room in the UK that I'm not familiar with. So I actually can really hear what's happening in a weird way. Mm-hmm. The setup is kind of complicated because I want to get a feed directly off the console. I'm not just going to be listening through the, by FaceTime or Zoom or whatever it is. So you have like two different audio feeds coming in and you kind of control it on this end. But I feel like, when this is all over, to a large degree, things may go back to normal, but they also might not. I think to a significant portion, people are spread out all over the place and they might just stay there.
I agree. I think we're being conditioned to a new normal.
Yeah.
And the more we do it, and the more people get used to it, the more we change. And it's got green shoots. It's got some stuff that's not good, but it's also got some stuff that's really I had somebody by the other day and I walked down the hallway and I said, "Oh, you just drove with me to work."
Wild.
It was about 10 steps away. And you're right. I've my own conditioned thing. So I think media in general is going through this change, and we're seeing different kinds of opportunities. I'm getting calls from Disney and other things. And they now want to collaborate with people and people that they didn't know they could reach out to. And the conditions make that possible. So I think it's a renaissance period for guys like yourself that are already at the top of the game and flexible and be able to do different things. Now people can access you and work with you in ways where they were paranoid before to do it. So part of the crazy Middle-earth 2020 that we're living in is just bizarre. Vermont versus LA, are your creative juices different back in Vermont? I mean,
I've always liked being in the countryside. Some of my favorite albums that I've produced have been when we go to a residential studio in the middle of nowhere and you have the time to really just lose yourself in what you're doing. I think it's really important that you have times when you're being creative, that you get lost, that you fail, that you hit something really hard and then just drive it really as far as you can to the point where maybe it starts to topple over a little bit.
Yeah.
And I feel maybe a bit more inclined to take risks, which I think great music demands it. And great anything really, I suppose. But I like being in LA a lot. I'm out here in Vermont now in the middle of nowhere. And I do feel like maybe not as pressed for time for whatever reason, even though my work schedule hasn't really changed. If a mix is taking too long in LA, I'd just be like, well, I got to wrap it up. And here I'm just like, I'll leave it up.
More.
And I do think that, like, I don't know how you feel about it, Dave, but like mixing used to take longer than it does.
Yeah.
I used to it wouldn't be unusual for me to spend 2.5 days on a song. A ways back. That's partly because I think that the stuff would come in sounding a lot more rough than it does now.
Yeah.
But also it was kind of expected and allowed that you would really take your time with it and try it out. Now partly because the workload, there's more stuff coming in all the time, but like you really just kind of like, it's harder to get that chance to do that.
I think for me, Rich, the migration from the main big studio, the professional studios in quotation marks, the migration from there to the bedroom and to home studios has allowed our clients the opportunity to not get a sound they kind of want, but to get the exact sound they want.
Right.
And I think technology has made that a lot easier too. So I think our job now is a little bit of repair work, but mostly just being inspired by what they gave us, because they took a lot of time choosing those sounds. The EDM world, you don't touch that stuff when you mix that stuff, because that's exactly the sound they want. And I think that's what we're seeing now, in your life and my life. One question. When Herb was talking, you and Herb were talking about the groove and the feel of some of the Muse stuff, are you still using the 3 boom boxes that you used to have?
I still have a lot of boom boxes. Yeah. I like a good 80s boom box. I'm a big fan of the Panasonic GX. I think it's the GX 1050 or something like that. I grew up on boom boxes and I still love them.
And see, Dave didn't quite know how to ask the important cultural question, which is, he got part of it, which is, do you still have boom boxes? The other part is, do you carry them up on your shoulder when you listen?
They're big, Herb. By the way, I'm going to embarrass Herb because it's part of my job. Herb used to do something similar to that, where he would go into one of the stores, Circuit City, if anybody knows what that is, but they had this big wall where you could play every car radio, listen to every speaker, every boom box, and take it from there, Herb.
Well, it was very simple. As a manager, I used to be able to figure out cheap focus groups. And so I would take the latest mixes of whatever singles were being thought about, and I'd go test stereos on a crowded Saturday with a bunch of folks in places.
Really
and you could literally go and target audiences. If it was a black thing, I could go down to the hood and do it. If it was a rock thing, I could go someplace else. If it was a mix, whatever it was, and you could just put the music on and then act like you were listening for whatever reason and just see people's reaction. And
Brilliant.
If they didn't like it, you could sort of see it physically. And if they really liked it, they would come over and go, what is that? And man, it was great. And it was, you added that to whatever else you were doing, but we've lost that public square. Like I sometimes say, we're the most disconnected, connected people I've ever seen in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very much. Yeah. No, it is weird. I think social media it's on the one hand, it enables you to feel connected, but it's also not a real connectedness. And a lot of people, it actually makes them more depressed and lonely.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. It is. We're all learning. And what we've seen on the show, which I imagine must be interesting, when you and I were talking on our introductory phone call, just about how we like country and wide open spaces. And I was doing Montreal and Kentucky and you were doing Vermont. And, you have to be comfortable with being alone or being just with family members and not having all that interaction and so on and so forth. One of the things we're seeing a lot on the show, which we like coming from our guests, is there's much more of adoption about mental health, talking about it, how it can affect your creativity, how you don't have to have shame about it. Like and particularly for creative people who want to torture themselves and all that kind of stuff, step up, reach out, talk. We're all going through stuff and it's okay. And it may unlock some things in your creativity once it stops being a demon for you potentially. So, another offshoot of this pandemic that comes and sits on us in different ways and sits on everybody in different ways, but we can do something with it as opposed to just let it affect us. So That's the end of my soapboxing. Thank you.
I mean, music is a brutal field to work in because it's, at the one hand, it's deeply personal for anyone, but particularly the artists are usually coming up with something that's they can't help it. They're coming up with something that's really personal, and they're being judged for what they've come up with.
Yeah.
And not only is that going on, but it's extremely competitive as well. So you're being judged creatively, you're being judged commercially on things that are deeply personal to you in private. It's a hard line of work.
Hard line. I tell people it's like surfing. You don't look pretty, just stay up on the board. No matter how you stay up on the board, just stay up on the board.
Rich, I agree with you. I think that part of our responsibility, and the biggest part of our responsibility, is to respect the music involved. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that rubs the client a little bit. But it's easy to find first of all, any argument the client has already won before they start, because they're gonna live with that piece of work, and it's going to determine their income. But for me, it's always like you. We have a lot in common. It's not unusual for me to go back after I hear a big record of mine over and over again. It just drives me crazy. So I'll go back in and remix it. I'll just do my own mix. And I've heard that you do that too, or have done that. And no, you haven't done it. You said, I think you told Andrew, you said, I don't care if I'm 75, I'm going to remix that damn record.
Yeah.
That endeared you to me quite a bit, because two things: I never know when I'm done, and I always feel like my mixes are incomplete. But then when I hear them, I like them. But I can pick out the little things that probably I shouldn't change, because the record did really well. That should say something, but. I can't fight it. I just have to go in and redo the stuff and do it the way I want to. 2 or 3 times I've given that to the artist, and it came out as more of a remix. So
yeah, it's a tricky line. I mean, it's that's something I talk about a lot with a few different artists about, like how does that work? What's the line there? Like, say for example, the remix of Sgt. Pepper. I mean, I like that. I actually thought the remix of it was made a lot of sense and why they did it. And I think that it does the job of what it was supposed to do. But with anything that's not quite as going as far back in history, it gets real tricky. But having said all that, yeah, the reason why I say that is for the same reason. Like, there's certain records where the record you're mentioning in particular is the second Mars Volta album, which was kind of a research project while it was being made. I don't think they would describe it as that, but that's sort of how it felt. And it was, I still think it was maybe the most complicated analog mix that's ever happened. They had to rewire it was in the SSL, the J room at Avatar. And they had to rewire the whole place to get enough inputs going to the console. And that particular album has all these sort of transitions where it sounds like that would have happened at the mastering stage, that we would have given them all these little snippets, but it didn't. It happened all during the mix. Mm-hmm. So we had like almost completely different songs coming up on small faders over here. And I had automated pans on the console and all kinds of madness. And there was one moment on that album, there's a 33-minute song that finishes the album. Which has now been ID'd into, I think, 7 songs or something on Spotify. But it was a 33-minute thing. And it took me, 6 or 7 days to mix it. And like on the 5th or 6th day, and these guys are like family. I'm really tight with them. And on like the 6th or 7th day, it was just, I couldn't see straight anymore, And at one point, Omar, who was producing the album, goes, he's looking at the console. He's like, "Where's the other Mars Volta? I don't hear it." And I'm just going, "What do you mean the other Mars Volta?" He's like, "There are other Mars Volta. Where is it?" And we were like, and it turned out he had a rehearsal recording of the band playing backwards. It was on 2 faders, like way over here, the other, and it was supposed to get faded up during this one section of the song.
Oh my God. Wow. That's when we needed video for that. Just GoPro in the corner watching you go nuts with that. That's amazing.
That was, yeah. I mixed that album 3 times.
Oh God.
And that's the one I still don't think it sounds right.
Now, are you a big plug-in guy, or is it analog? Are you?
Yeah, it's definitely a little both. I mean, as you can see, there's a desk behind me, and I do still split everything out onto the console, and I like to do. I still like having a real 480 and a couple of Bricastis, and I still like the sound of. I've got some EAR 660s and the Neve 33609 and all that stuff running on a parallel for different reasons. And then, but there's tons of stuff going on in the computer as well. And then I'll print to a separate computer at 96K and put some plugins on the mix as well. So I'm kind of all over the place, whatever sounds good.
What's on the bucket list? What does Rich want to do next? What haven't you done that you'd like to do?
I like to expand the genres that I'm doing. I think that when you have a good amount of success in one sort of area, you tend to get sort of, I wouldn't say pigeonholed, but you tend to be considered as mostly doing a certain kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't really listen to the genre of music that I work in that much. I do sometimes, for sure. But I like listening to a lot of hip hop. I listen to a lot of classical music. And there is always a bit of broadening the palette going on. So I don't really have a lot to complain about.
Any cinema stuff in your future?
Have not really done any of that. That would be fun.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, good.
Yeah. I mean, like in the 90s, I did some stuff for Philip Glass. And when you work for Phil, there's a constant river of things coming through, and some days it's a movie, and some days it's you don't even know what it is. There's constant stuff coming in.
Just hold on,
yeah, just like a bunch of arpeggios all day. That's all you need to know.
Exactly. Wow. Now, Dave, are you going to do the Vermont version of a batter's box?
Oh dear.
Yeah. I drank a gallon of maple syrup today, so I should be able to do it.
When I heard the word Vermont, I thought about, back in Canada, we tap the tree.
Oh yeah.
So, it's real stuff there, man. Oh,
yeah. You see that all over the place around here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna take the liberty of my position in this whole thing and cheat for a second and try and sneak in a 100% for me question. Is it true that you ran a lot of your snares and drums through a Marshall and then ran that through an Artone?
I don't remember a Marshall being involved in there, but I did do the gimmick where you put an Ortone on top of a snare drum, suspended with a couple of drumsticks, feed your snare. Oftentimes, at that point, the snare sample, you would mix in the live snare as well, and then put some mics underneath the snare drum, and that would sort of liven up the drum sound. I did that for many, many years. I think I saw Jack Puig do that. Probably stole it from him.
I'm thinking about Rick, because you were with Rick a lot. That might be a Rick technique. What I used to do is I used to take a 12-inch Celestion and just lay it on top of the snare and then send signal to that.
Right.
And the attack it produced a really good attack. The only thing it was pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, I got that out of the way. Let's get some serious business done here.
Well, hold on. So Rich, batter's box?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
The lightning round.
Yeah, and absolutely. And one of our favorite answers is Dave, go to hell. So oh yeah, there's no rules. So
okay.
I prefer Dave, you ignorant slut. That's the one I prefer now.
We just heard it. So
back during the non-PC days, that was a Saturday Night Live thing. Are we ready?
Yep.
Let's do it.
All right.
Major or minor?
Minor.
Inspiration.
Sky.
Saturation. That's a great answer, by the way. Saturation.
A bit.
Favorite synth?
ARP 2600.
Summing?
Always. External. Analog.
Guitar pedals?
Many.
Limiters?
I kind of like the Weiss limiter.
Yeah, expensive.
PS1.
Yeah. Stereo bus?
Bit of SSL, a bit of today it's a bit of 31105.
31105. At the end, let me ask you about that. 31102. Okay. Producer or mixer?
Both.
Good answer.
Sub, as in speaker.
Lots.
Bass.
Good. I don't know. Yes, bass, good.
There you go.
So you set a quarantine record for the most questions in terms of the individual elements I was asking. I asked you 12 different things, and you did it in the time a lot of our friends did it, and I could only get 6 or 7 in. So last one, what is the least expensive piece of gear that you've used on a major record?
Someone scratching their head as percussion.
All-time best answer.
That's free. That's the free instrument.
It's actually called the dandruff.
Do you have psoriasis or something?
That is the best.
It makes a good shaker sound. You get a couple of people mic up their heads and have them scratch their heads. Sounds good.
What if you did a Chad Blake binaural head and scratched that and recorded it?
That would be interesting. I mean, it would probably just sound like something rumbling, wouldn't it?
Well, but my Chad Blake and a binaural head is made in heaven. I mean, he uses that so well.
Sure.
I concede, Herb. You don't have to embarrass me.
No. I was going to say, I was thinking about that scratching sound, because if you got a bunch of different afros, levels of afros.
Oh yeah,
man, and then run it through a processor or something, you could get real jiggy.
You get a whole orchestra going.
I'm telling you, man, the 30-head orchestra. Before we wrap up, one of the most fun parts about it of researching you was the time and attention that you spend on upper bottom.
Yeah,
upper bottom.
Great question.
Wow, I don't think I've ever heard it put like that.
And I just said, no, there's a guy that is absolutely looking at specific kinds of things to get it really.
What can you drill down on that for a second? What exactly are you? What do you mean?
So
I'll tell you my opinion if you want. I'll go after you. Well, there's a lot of train wrecks down in the below 80 or below the 100, and
yeah,
kick drum will cover up the snare will cover up a vocal, the vocal will cover up a bass or a kick drum, and before low end focus, it was a train wreck, and it took a lot of. First of all, you have to be able to hear that low in your monitoring environment. Secondarily, you need to be able to pick out sounds that are only a quarter of an octave apart. It's not like 10K where you got 10,000 of something that's apart. You're like just single digits in some spots,
Yes,
and
that's
so the way that I perceive Herb's question is, no matter what size speaker, no matter what speaker, no matter if it's headphones or whatever, there's a clarity to the bass that gives it a contribution on the low end, particularly for rhythmic stuff, that's enviable for me, as the best way I should say it. Is that what you're thinking, Herb?
Well, no, it was actually probably yes, but it was actually back in 2018. Rich was interviewed, and he was talking about what he was working on at that point in time. That kind of space was a space that he would look at in the mix to make sure that there wasn't any competition between.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, that is like a super crowded area.
Mm-hmm.
You've got almost every instrument is getting busy down there. You know what I mean? And so it's just a war. And that's not the case in some of the other frequencies. Like you're talking about 10K. That's like, there's definitely a few things that can trip you up there. But yeah, the upper bottom is definitely where the crowded area is. Yeah, I mean, you just put high pass the shit out of everything.
Now makes me look at people differently. I was like, oh, what about their upper bottom? which is not a good thing.
No, you don't want to. You want to like be having dinner and going, man, this salad's got too much upper bottom in it.
Absolutely, that's a problem. My sushi has upper bottom in it. That's just not a good thing.
No.
Rich, it was worth every bit of time it took to make it happen. Yeah. I got to tell you, please know that this platform is yours anytime you want.
Thanks so much, guys. This was really amazing. Yeah, it's fun.
We try to have fun, but we also get a chance to learn and admire the people that we admire. So it's actually more of a pleasure for Dave and I. And Lucas and that camp over there, those are my boys. So
yep.
Yeah, we dig them a lot. And please, there's so much more to talk about. This is just your first visit.
Okay.
So let's do more if we could.
Love it. Sounds great.
Love to do it. Dave, why don't you take us home?
Okay, Herb. I heard a quote from Rich that he was discussing the early part of his career, and he realized that he needed a reliance on music, and so that phrase has stuck with me over the last couple of weeks. A reliance on music, and when I was 7, 8 years old, I felt the same way, and I think that the thing that separates the greats like Rich and some of the other people we've had on the show, most of the other people we've had on the show, is that reliance on music. I can't define it because the definition doesn't exist. It just gives you a better life when it's in your life, and that's how you can tell you're a musician. So thanks for being with us, Rich. Hope I did make some sense with that, and we'll see you guys next time.